The following presentation dramatizes ancient mythological events that include themes of violence and death. Viewer discretion is advised. He was the god of light, joy, and purity. He was untouchable, invincible, blessed by every living thing in the cosmos. His death was, by all accounts, impossible. And yet he died. Not in a glorious battle against a frost giant, not by the sorcery of a dark elf, but by a single catastrophic mistake. An oversight so small, so seemingly insignificant, it was dismissed as harmless. And that one tiny error in judgment would unravel reality itself, plunging the 9 realms into a prophesied winter that would never end, and igniting the final apocalyptic war of the gods, Ragnarok. The gods believed they had sealed every crack in their defense, fortified every wall against fate. But in their desperation to protect one of their own, they created the very weapon that would doom them all. The question isn't just what killed the invincible god Baldur. It's how his own family handed the killer the loaded gun. To understand how the universe ends, you must first understand how perfect it once was. For a time there was light. Asgard, the fortress of the Aesir gods, glittered at the apex of the cosmos, a beacon of power and order built on the bones of primordial giants. This was the age of heroes, the era before the shadows began to creep in. Odin, the Allfather, sat on his high throne, his one eye scanning the 9 realms, his twin ravens thought in memory, bringing him news from every corner of existence. Thor, his mighty son, patrolled the borders with his hammer Mjolnir, a bulwark of thunder and lightning against the forces of chaos. This was a world of certainty, of strength, of a golden age that felt eternal. And at the very heart of that golden age was Odin's other son. He was called Baldur the Beautiful, but the name was an understatement. He wasn't just handsome. He was the physical embodiment of light, warmth, and grace. In a realm of warriors and kings defined by their strength and cunning, Baldur was defined by his goodness. Where he walked, flowers were set to bloom in his footsteps. His laughter could calm the most violent tempers. His presence was a balm against sorrow, a living antidote to darkness and despair. He was loved, not just respected like Odin or admired like Thor. He was truly, deeply, and universally loved by all. He was the sun around which Asgard orbited. But then the dreams began. Not nightmares of monsters or battles, the gods were used to those. These were different. They were quiet, cold, and final. Night after night, Baldur was tormented by visions of his own demise. He saw a world without light, a hall draped in shadow, a silent journey to the frozen realm of the dead. He would wake in a cold sweat, the joy drained from his face, replaced by a deep and unshakable dread. The light of Asgard was beginning to flicker. When he finally confessed his terrors to the other gods, a fear unlike any they had ever known gripped their halls. If Baldur, the very symbol of life and hope, could die, then nothing was safe. The Golden Age was a fragile illusion, and the prophecy of Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, suddenly felt less like a distant myth and more like a coming storm. Odin, the Allfather, ruler of the 9 realms, who had stared into the well of Mimir and sacrificed his own eye for ultimate knowledge, was afraid. Prophecy was his domain, but these visions were a black, unreadable void. He saddled his 8-legged steed Sleipnir and rode down the roots of the world tree, into the dark heart of Helheim, the realm of the dead. There he used forbidden magic to raise the spirit of a long-dead seeress, a prophetess, to demand answers. The ancient spirit spoke reluctantly, confirming his worst fears. A place in hell was indeed being prepared. The halls were being swept, the mead was being brewed, all in anticipation of a new arrival, Baldur. While Odin sought grim answers in the dark, his wife, the goddess Frigg, queen of Asgard and mother of Baldur, decided to take action. She was the goddess of motherhood, foresight, and love, and she would not stand by while fate stole her son. If prophecy decreed her son would die, she would simply unmake the prophecy. She would wage a war against causality itself. Her plan was as simple as it was audacious. She would make the entire world promise never to hurt him. Her quest was one of unimaginable scale. She traveled through all 9 realms, her quiet determination an unstoppable force. She walked the fiery plains of Muspelheim and made fire promise not to burn him. She journeyed to the misty shores of Niflheim and made water vow never to drown him. She stood before mountains of ore and made iron and all other metals swear they would not cut him. Stones pledged not to bruise him. The great trees of the forest, whose would form the handles of axes and shafts of spears, bowed to her will. The beasts of the wild, the birds in the sky, the serpents that crawled in the dust, all swore the oath. She even extracted a promise from sickness and poison, commanding them to pass him by. Every conceivable threat, from the grandest force of nature to the smallest splinter of wood, was bound by her magic. She had woven a shield of oaths around her son, a shield made from the fabric of reality itself. And so Baldur became invincible. The fear that had gripped Asgard lifted, replaced by joyous, almost manic celebration. And that celebration took a strange and ultimately fatal form. The gods invented a new game. They would stand Baldur in the center of their great hall, and they would hurl things at him. It was a test, a reaffirmation of their victory. Thor threw his axe, a weapon that had felled giants, only to see it shatter into pieces against Baldur's chest. The finest swords of the elves glanced off his skin without leaving a scratch. Great boulders, hurled by the strongest among them, crumbled to dust upon impact. Every failed attack was met with uproarious laughter and cheers. It was the greatest entertainment in Asgard, a spectacle of defiance against the grim future they had so recently feared. Baldur stood in the center of it all, smiling, bathed in the love and relief of his people, completely and utterly safe. But one god did not join the celebration. One god stood in the shadows, watching. He didn't see a victory over fate. He saw arrogance. He saw a puzzle, a lock waiting for the right key. This was Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the blood brother of Odin himself, a giant son living among the gods, never fully one of them. While the others saw invincibility, Loki saw a system. And as he watched the gods laugh while they threw weapons at their invincible prize, a single venomous thought took root in his mind. Every system has a flaw. Every fortress has a secret door. And every oath has an exception. Frigg, in her all-consuming quest to protect her son, had spoken to every rock, every river, every beast, every disease. She had accounted for all the great and terrible dangers of the 9 realms. But in her haste, in her desperate, sweeping love, she had overlooked something. Something so small, so young, so harmless, she had deemed it unworthy of an oath. A trifle. A thing of no consequence. And Loki, the master of finding truth in the overlooked details, was about to begin his search for it. To find a weakness in a fortress, you don't pound on the stone walls. You listen at the cracks. And Loki, the god of whispers and shadows, was the greatest listener of all. He knew that direct confrontation with Frigg would yield nothing. She was a queen, her will as strong as the roots of Yggdrasil. No, to learn her secret, he couldn't be a god. He had to become someone invisible, someone pitiable, someone people talk at, not to. And so Loki shed the skin of his own form like a snake, his sharp, handsome features melting away, his powerful frame stooping and shrinking. His vibrant hair faded to a brittle, snowy white. His skin wrinkled and folded, mapping decades of hardship he had never experienced. He cloaked himself in the guise of an old woman, a stooped crone leaning heavily on a gnarled staff, her eyes watery and dim. In this form he was no threat. He was a footnote, a piece of scenery, easily ignored and more easily trusted. He hobbled towards Fensalar, Frigg's great hall of the mists. This was the heart of her power, a place of weaving and knowing. As he approached, he could hear the distant echoes of revelry from the plains of Gladsheim, the shouts and laughter of the gods as they continued their new favorite sport, testing Baldur's invincibility. But here, closer to Frigg's domain, the air was quieter, imbued with a nervous relief. He saw a group of Frigg's handmaidens, their chatter a soft murmur against the backdrop of the larger celebration. Perfect. Leaning on his staff, the disguised Loki approached them, his voice a frail, reedy thing. "Oh, my dears," he began, a quavering smile on his lips. "What a glorious day for Asgard. To hear such joy. They say the beautiful Baldur can no longer be harmed. Is it true? Has our wise queen truly accomplished such a miracle?" The handmaidens, pleased by the old woman's reverence, swelled with pride. "It is true, grandmother," one of them said, beaming. "Our Lady Frigg has traveled to the 9 realms. She has taken an oath from everything, from fire and water, iron and all the metals, from stones and earth, from trees and sicknesses, poisons and all the beasts and birds and crawling things. Nothing will harm the Shining One." Loki's eyes, cleverly masked to look dim, widened with feigned astonishment. He clasped his hands together, a picture of awe. Everything? By the All-Father's beard. That is a task beyond comprehension. To think of it. Every single thing in creation bound by a single promise. She must be the cleverest of all goddesses. He let the flattery hang in the air. A sweet poison. Then he delivered the hook. He tilted his head, a look of simple-minded confusion on his face. But did she truly miss nothing? In all that travel, in all those oaths, it seems impossible. It was a subtle challenge, wrapped in the guise of admiration. He wasn't questioning Frigg's power, but celebrating the sheer impossibility of her success. And it worked. The handmaidens, eager to prove the completeness of their queen's victory, were drawn in. One of them laughed, a light, dismissive sound. "You fret for nothing, old one. The queen is thorough." There was only one thing. One tiny thing she passed over. Loki's heart, the cold, cunning heart of a trickster, gave a single hard beat. He leaned in closer, cupping a hand to his ear. "Eh? What's that, my dear? My hearing isn't what it used to be. One thing. Surely not something dangerous." "Dangerous? Heavens, no!" The handmaiden scoffed, waving a hand as if shooing a fly. "It was just the mistletoe. There's a little shrub that grows, just west of Valhalla. When the queen saw it, she thought it was far too young and tender to demand an oath from. It's just a sprout. What harm could a child like that possibly do to a god?" Mistletoe. The word struck Loki like a bolt of lightning. It was so perfect, so beautifully, poetically insignificant. The one thing Frigg had dismissed out of pity. The one thing she had deemed too harmless to matter. The universe, in its cruel irony, had left a single key lying in plain sight, and Loki had just been told where to find it. He offered his thanks to the handmaidens, bowing and scraping, muttering blessings on their queen and her brilliant son. Then, as quickly as his aged form would allow, he turned and shuffled away. The moment he was out of their sight, the illusion dissolved. The stooped back straightened into a pillar of malicious intent. The shuffling walk became a swift, silent stride. The old crone was gone, and the god of mischief was reborn, his mind alight with a singular, terrible purpose. He moved west of Valhalla, to the ancient forest that bordered the Hall of the Slain. The air here was old, heavy with the weight of memory and forgotten things. And there, just as the handmaiden had described, he found it. It wasn't a mighty oak or a fearsome thorn bush. It was a slender, parasitic plant, clinging to the bark of a larger tree. Its leaves were a pale, waxy green, its berries like small white pearls. It looked innocent. It looked fragile. It looked like life, not death. Loki reached out a hand, not with reverence, but with the cold precision of a master craftsman selecting his tool. He snapped a sprig from its host branch. The sound was barely audible, a tiny crack in the vast silence of the wood, but to Loki it was the sound of a lock turning, the sound of a plan coming together. In his hands, the harmless plant began to change. Loki was not just a trickster. He was a being of immense and subtle power. He poured his will into the wood, his dark magic flowing like poison into its sap. The soft stem hardened, becoming dense and unyielding. The tip sharpened to a wicked point, honed by nothing more than his malicious intent. He worked it, shaped it, transformed it from a simple sprig of mistletoe into something else entirely. A dart, a fletched arrow, a weapon. It was small, elegant, and perfectly singularly deadly. It was the only thing in all of creation that held Baldur's fate in its fibers. With the weapon concealed in his cloak, Loki returned to the fields of Gladsheim. The party was in full swing. The laughter was louder, the boasts more grand. Thor was there, hurling his hammer Mjolnir at Baldur, only to watch it veer away at the last second as if repelled by a shield. The other gods threw axes, boulders, spears, a terrifying arsenal of destruction, all rendered as harmless as children's toys against the shining god. Baldur stood in the center of it all, laughing, his face a beacon of pure, unadulterated light. It was a festival of invulnerability, a celebration of a world without consequence. Loki scanned the crowd, his eyes gliding past the powerful, the proud, the boisterous. He was looking for his instrument, not the weapon. He already had that. He needed the hand to wield it, a hand that was innocent, a hand that could not be blamed, a hand that belonged to someone who couldn't see what they were doing. And then he saw him. Standing at the edge of the crowd, apart from the celebration, was Hodr. Baldur's twin brother. While Baldur was the god of light, Hodr was the god of darkness, for he had been born blind. He could hear the joyous shouts of his kin, the thud of weapons striking the air around his brother, but he could not see the spectacle. He stood alone in his own quiet world, a shadow at the edge of the sunlit festival. He was isolated. He was eager to belong. He was the perfect tragic pawn. Slowly, a serpent smile playing on his lips, Loki approached the blind god. He moved with a practiced, friendly gait, the hardened mistletoe hidden in the folds of his clothing. He came to a stop beside Hodr, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Hodr, my friend," Loki said, his voice smooth as oiled steel. "Why do you stand apart? Why do you not join the others in honoring your magnificent brother?" Hodr flinched at the touch, his head turning towards the sound of Loki's voice. The blind god's face was a mask of melancholy, a stark contrast to the joyous chaos erupting just a few yards away. He sighed, a sound swallowed by the din of celebration. "I cannot see where my brother stands, Loki," he said, his voice low and heavy with a sorrow that went deeper than his sightless eyes. "And my hands are empty. I have nothing to throw. How can I honor him when I cannot even see his glory? How can I join a game where my only contribution would be to miss?" Loki's feigned sympathy was a masterpiece of deception. He clicked his tongue, a sound of theatrical pity. To be left out of such a grand celebration, it is an injustice. You, his own brother, standing here in the shadows while others bask in his light. It isn't right. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But what if your hands were not empty? What if I could give you something to throw? Something to show your love, to make your presence known?" Hodr's head tilted, a flicker of hope crossing his features. "But what? Every weapon, every stone, every object of substance has been thrown. There is nothing left that I could cast." "Oh, I wouldn't say that," Loki purred, and from the folds of his tunic, he produced a slender green sprig. It had been sharpened to a point, looking less like a branch and more like a dart. It was delicate, almost fragile. "I found this growing on an oak east of Valhalla. A humble little thing. But it is something. A token. Is it not better to offer a small tribute than none at all?" Now what Loki offered was not just a twig. It was a key, a fatal exception, a cosmic loophole that the trickster god had discovered through his patient, venomous whispers across the 9 realms. When Baldur's mother, Frigg, was first haunted by the prophetic dreams of her son's death, her fear drove her to action. She, the queen of Asgard, embarked on the most ambitious diplomatic mission in history. She moved through worlds, a desperate mother armed with divine authority. She spoke to fire and it swore an oath. She knelt before water and it swore an oath. She commanded iron and lead, copper and gold, and every metal swore never to harm her son. She took oaths from stones and soil, from the great trees of the forest and the smallest blades of grass. She bound diseases and poisons, great beasts and tiny insects to her will. Everything, from the mightiest Jotun to the most minuscule microbe, swore a sacred, unbreakable vow. They would not touch Baldur the Beautiful. It was a shield of absolute invincibility, woven from the very fabric of existence. But in her all-consuming quest, in her meticulous catalog of every conceivable threat, Frigg had made one single catastrophic omission. She had seen the mistletoe, a parasitic plant, clinging to the side of a great oak. It seemed so young, so harmless, so utterly insignificant. It was neither of the sky nor of the earth, living in a strange place in between. In her haste, or perhaps her pride, she had dismissed it. "It is too young to swear an oath," she had thought, and passed it by. And Loki, the finder of flaws, the exploiter of forgotten details, had learned of this. He had found the one loose thread in Frigg's perfect tapestry, and he now held it in his hand, ready to pull. He pressed the sharpened mistletoe into Hodr's palm. The blind god's fingers, sensitive and searching, traced its shape. It felt light, insignificant. "This?" Hodr asked, his voice laced with doubt. "This is but a twig, Loki. It will shatter before it even reaches him." "Perhaps," Loki said, his voice a silken trap. "But its touch will be a gentle one. A brother's caress, not a warrior's strike. Think of it, Hodr. Even your mother, in her wisdom, saw this plant as too gentle and harmless to even ask for an oath. Cannot possibly hurt him." but it will land. And when it does, Baldur will feel it, and he will know that his brother, who stands in darkness, still found a way to honor him in the light. Is that not a gift worth giving? The argument was perfect. It played on Hodr's love, his desire to be included, his trust in his mother's work. He had been given a way to participate that was uniquely his. A gentle offering in a game of brutal, harmless force. A smile, the first genuine smile of the day, touched Hodr's lips. "Yes," he said, his voice firming with resolve. "Yes, you are right. Help me." Loki's own smile was hidden by the shadows. "Of course, my friend. It would be my honor." He took Hodr by the shoulders, turning him to face the center of the circle. He could feel the blind god's muscles tense with anticipation. The sounds of the revelry were at their peak. The roar of the gods, the splintering of wood, the clang of metal on immortal skin. It was the perfect cover. "Now," Loki whispered, his lips close to Hodr's ear. "Raise your arm. I will guide you. I will aim for you." Hodr did as he was told, lifting the mistletoe dart. Loki placed a hand over his, adjusting the angle, correcting the trajectory. The touch was cold. "The crowd is thick," Loki murmured. "But I see a clear path." Baldur is just turning. He is laughing at Thor, who just threw his hammer with all his might. He is perfectly positioned. Loki's guidance was precise, his words painting a picture that Hodr could almost see. "A little higher to the left, steady now. He is right there. The pride of Asgard. Your brother." Every instinct in Hodr's body, every ounce of love he had for his radiant sibling, focused on this single act. He was no longer an outcast. He was a participant. He was a brother showing his love. He blocked out the noise, focusing only on the feel of the dart in his hand and the guiding voice of his trusted friend. "Now, Hodr," Loki breathed, his voice barely a hiss. "Throw. Throw with all your heart." With a surge of strength and a soul full of love, Hodr threw the dart. It flew through the air not like a weapon but like a secret. It made no sound, a thin green line slicing through the chaos unnoticed. It passed by a thrown spear, dodged a hurled boulder, and sailed directly towards the center of the divine circle. The gods were still laughing, their eyes on Thor, who was boasting about the power of his throw. None of them saw the tiny projectile. None of them saw the one thing in all of creation that had not sworn an oath. It struck Baldur in the chest. The impact was nothing. A soft thud, barely audible over the din. For a single eternal moment, Baldur just stood there. The broad, beatific smile remained on his face. He looked down, a puzzled expression in his eyes, as if a fly had landed on his tunic. He saw the small green sprig protruding from his heart. Then the light in his eyes began to fade. Like a candle being slowly snuffed out, the divine radiance that perpetually surrounded him flickered, dimmed, and vanished. A dark stain, impossibly red against his white clothes, began to spread from the point of impact. His knees gave way. The smile was wiped from his face, replaced by a look of profound, silent shock. Without a word, without a cry, Baldur the Beautiful, the joy of the gods and the brightest soul in Asgard, collapsed onto the grass. Silence fell. It didn't creep in. It crashed down like a mountain, instantly crushing the laughter, the boasting, the entire celebration. Weapons dropped from nerveless fingers. Jaws hung agape. The gods stared, their minds unable to process what their eyes were seeing. It had to be a jest, a new elaborate trick by Baldur himself. But then Frigg screamed. It was not a sound of this world. It was the sound of a universe breaking, a mother's soul being torn from her body. It was a shriek of pure, undiluted agony that shattered the sky and echoed in the heart of every being in Asgard. That sound broke the spell of disbelief. This was real. The impossible had happened. And in that first terrible moment of collective, world-ending grief, as every eye was fixed in horror upon the fallen god, no one saw a slender figure detach himself from the side of the blind, trembling Hodr. No one saw Loki slip away into the deepening shadows, his face unreadable, his work finally, terribly done. The silence that followed the fall of Baldur was a living thing. It was heavier than the mountains of Jotunheim, deeper than the darkest ocean trench. It was a silence filled with the impossible, the unthinkable. For a frozen heartbeat, the universe held its breath. And then it was shattered. A sound tore through the air, a sound of such pure primal anguish that it seemed to crack the very sky above Asgard. It was the shriek of a mother who had just seen the light of her world extinguished. It was Frigg. She collapsed, her carefully constructed composure, her queenly dignity, all of it dissolving into a storm of inconsolable grief. Her cry was the signal. The dam of disbelief broke, and a tidal wave of sorrow crashed over the assembled gods. Cries of rage mingled with sobs of despair. The games, the laughter, the celebration of Baldur's invincibility. It all felt like a sick, twisted dream. Odin, the Allfather, stood like a statue carved from ancient ice. His one eye saw not only his dead son, but the unraveling threads of prophecy, the first great tremor of the coming twilight. He had seen this day in his visions, had fought for centuries to prevent it, and yet here it was. The gnawing horror of inevitability had finally arrived. Thor's hands clenched around the handle of Mjolnir, his knuckles white, his beard bristling with sparks of building lightning. His gaze fell upon the still smoking mistletoe dart, and then to the man who had thrown it. Hodr. The blind god was on his knees, his hands outstretched, trembling, uncomprehending. He could hear the weeping, feel the sudden terrifying chill in the air, but he could not see the devastation he had wrought. "What is it?" he stammered, his voice thin with confusion and fear. Did I hit the mark? Was it a good throw?" The innocence in his voice was more damning than any confession. Thor took a half-step forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest, every instinct screaming for vengeance. But Odin's hand shot out, gripping his son's arm with iron strength. "Not now. Not like this." The laws of the sacred assembly ground, the Fritzstater, protected all within it from violence. To spill blood here, even the blood of a kinslayer, would be an unforgivable crime, a stain upon the honor of all Asgard. But the law felt like a hollow comfort in the face of such a profound loss. It was Frigg who rose first, her face a mask of tear-streaked determination. Grief had not broken her. It had forged her into something new, something desperate. She surveyed the faces of the gods, her kin, her family, all of them paralyzed by sorrow. "This will not be the end," she declared, her voice shaking but resonant with a sliver of impossible hope. "Fate is not yet written in stone. There is still a chance." She turned her gaze to the assembled Aesir, her eyes pleading. "Is there one among you," she cried, "one so brave, so bold, that he would earn all of my love and favor for the rest of his days? Is there one who would ride the road to hell?" A stunned silence fell once more. The road to hell. A journey into the land of the dead. A realm from which no one, not even a god, was meant to return. To bargain with the grim queen of the underworld, the half-living, half-dead daughter of Loki. It was madness. A suicide mission. "Who among you," Frigg pressed, her voice rising with frantic energy, "will ride down into the darkness and find hell herself? Who will offer her a ransom, gold, anything she desires, if only she will release my son? If only she will let Baldur the Beautiful return to the light?" For a long moment no one moved. The risk was too great, the task too daunting. But then a figure stepped forward. It was Hermod, another of Odin's sons. He was not the strongest like Thor, nor the wisest like his father, but he was known throughout the 9 realms as Hermod the Bold, the Swift. His heart was filled with courage, and his love for his brother Baldur was boundless. "I will go," he said, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the despair. "I will ride the windswept road to hell. I will face the Queen of the Dead, and I will not return without our brother." A flicker of life returned to Odin's eye. He nodded slowly, striding to his son. He placed a hand on Hermod's shoulder, a silent blessing and a warning all in one. For this journey, an ordinary steed would not suffice. Hermod would need the greatest of all horses, the child of Loki and the stallion Svalfari. He would need Sleipnir, the 8-legged steed of the Allfather, the only creature fast enough to outrun the shadows on the road to death. As Hermod was prepared for his impossible quest, the other gods turned to their own grim task, preparing a funeral worthy of the sun itself. They would not let Baldur pass into memory without the grandest farewell the cosmos had ever witnessed. His great ship, Ringhorni, said to be the largest vessel ever built, was chosen as his funeral pyre. But it was so immense, so heavy with the grief of its master, that not even the strongest of the gods could push it from the land into the sea. In their sorrow, they were forced to send for help from the land of their ancient enemies. A messenger was dispatched to Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, to summon a giantess named Hyrrokin. She arrived riding a colossal wolf, using venomous snakes as reins. With a single earth-shattering push, she sent the great ship groaning and scraping into the water, the friction of its passage causing flames to erupt from the rollers beneath its hull. The body of Baldur was carried aboard, a serene and beautiful figure even in death. The sight was too much for his beloved wife, Nanna. Her heart, unable to bear the weight of her grief, simply broke. She collapsed and died right there on the shore. In their sorrow, the gods placed her body on the pyre alongside her husband, so they might journey together into the unknown. The funeral drew mourners from every corner of existence. Frost giants and mountain giants stood shoulder to shoulder with elves and dwarves. Valkyries descended from the heavens. Even Odin's own ravens, Hugin and Munin, circled silently overhead, their usual chatter silenced by the solemnity of the occasion. Odin himself ascended the pyre. He leaned close to his son's ear and whispered a final secret, a mystery that no one else would ever know. Then he placed upon the pyre his most precious possession after his spear, the golden ring Draupnir, the source of infinite wealth, a father's final useless gift to his departed son. It was Thor who consecrated the pyre. He stood before the great ship, his face a thundercloud of grief and rage. He raised Mjolnir high, the hammer humming with cosmic power, and spoke the ancient rites to sanctify the flames. As he did, a dwarf named Lit scurried past his feet, and in a sudden blind surge of fury and frustration, Thor lashed out with his foot, kicking the unfortunate creature directly into the heart of the pyre. It was a shocking, brutal act, a testament to how the death of the god of peace had already begun to unravel the civility of all others. And then the pyre was lit. Flames, impossibly bright, roared to the heavens, consuming the ship, the lovers, and the dwarf in a pillar of fire and smoke. The light of Baldur's funeral pyre was so brilliant it could be seen from every one of the 9 realms, a final fleeting echo of the light he had brought to the world. A star had gone out, but far from the light of that fire, Hermod the Bold rode on. Aboard the 8-legged Sleipnir, he galloped into the descending darkness. For 9 full nights, he rode through valleys so deep and so dark that he could not see the path before him, trusting only in the supernatural footing of his steed. He rode north and he rode down, ever down, on a path that grew colder and quieter with every league. Finally, he came to a mighty river, Joel, its waters roaring with the sound of clashing swords. Spanning it was a single bridge, Jalarbru, its arches glittering as if roofed with pure gold. But guarding the bridge was a skeletal giantess, Modgud. "State your name and your purpose," she rasped, her voice like grinding stones. "5 troops of dead men rode over this bridge yesterday, but it rings no less under you alone. You do not have the color of the dead. Why do you ride the road to hell?" Hermod, his face grim, did not dismount. "I am Hermod," he announced, "and I ride to find Baldur. Have you seen him pass this way?" The guardian of the bridge nodded slowly. "Baldur has crossed the river Joel," she confirmed. "The road to hell lies downward, and to the north." With a nod of thanks, Hermod spurred Sleipnir onward, the horse's 8 hooves thundering across the golden bridge and into the true lands of the dead. He rode on until he came to a set of massive towering gates, barred and locked. The gates of Helheim itself. This was the point of no return. Gathering all his resolve, Hermod dug his heels into Sleipnir's sides. The great horse gathered itself and in a single impossible leap, cleared the gates entirely, landing safely inside the courtyard of the underworld. Before him lay the halls of the dead, a place of mist and silence. And somewhere within, its grim queen awaited, holding the fate of his brother, and perhaps the fate of all the worlds, in her cold, lifeless hands. He pushed past the great doors of Lulchnir, the hall of the dead, and the silence within was a physical force. It was heavier than any shield, colder than any Fimbulwinter frost. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient dust, did not stir. Before him stretched a hall so vast its far walls were lost in shadow, its ceiling a black void where smoke from 1,000 cold hearths had stained the stone over untold ages. This was no Valhalla. There was no feasting, no song, no clash of arms. There were only tables stretching into the gloom, and at them sat the dead. Legions of them. Kings and farmers, warriors and weavers, all who had died of sickness or old age, their lives ending not in a blaze of glory but with a quiet final sigh. They did not speak. They did not move. They simply sat, their eyes like clouded glass, staring at nothing, lost in an eternity of stillness. As Hermod, the lone point of vibrant, breathing life in this kingdom of decay, walked the long aisle, their heads did not turn. He was a flicker of flame in a world of ash, and they were long past noticing the warmth. At the far end of the hall, upon a throne carved from a single massive block of ice-shot rock, sat the queen, Hel, daughter of Loki. She was a being of stark, impossible contrasts. The right side of her body was that of a breathtakingly beautiful woman, with skin like pure cream and hair the color of a midnight sky. But the left side was the stuff of nightmares. It was the mottled blue-black flesh of a corpse, skin drawn tight over bone, an eye a milky sightless orb, a cheek hollowed by decay. She was life and death bound in a single form, her very existence a violation of natural law. She watched Hermod's approach with an unnerving stillness, her one good eye holding a gaze as cold and final as the grave. She did not rise. She did not speak. The ruler of the dead had no need for greetings. Hermod stopped before her throne, the chill radiating from it seeping into his bones, and he lowered his head in a gesture of respect owed not to a god, but to a fundamental power of the cosmos. "Hail, Queen of the Underworld." Hermod's voice, though strong, seemed small and thin in the cavernous silence. "I am Hermod, son of Odin. I come as a messenger from Asgard." Hel's expression did not change. Only her lips, one full and red, the other thin and blue, parted to speak. Her voice was a disquieting harmony of two tones, one melodic and clear, the other a dry sepulchral whisper, layered one over the other. "The living have no business here. State yours and be gone." "I come on behalf of all the Aesir," Hermod began, his voice gaining strength, fueled by the desperation of his quest. "I come on behalf of a father who has lost his most beloved son. I come on behalf of a mother whose heart has been shattered. The light of the nine realms, Baldur the Beautiful, has been taken from us. His death has plunged the world into a grief so profound that the very stones seem to weep. Asgard is shrouded in sorrow. The sun is pale in the sky. Laughter has been forgotten." He took a step closer, his eyes pleading. "My mother Frigg has sent me. She begs you. All of Asgard begs you. Release him. Let Baldur ride back to the land of the living. The price, whatever it may be, we will pay it. Name your ransom in gold, in magic, in oaths. We will give anything to have him back." For a long moment, Hel was silent, her dual face a mask of cold contemplation. The dead watched on unblinking. The fate of a god, the fate of the world, hung on the word of this grim queen. Finally she spoke, her layered voice echoing in the hall. "The love for a thing is measured by the grief of its absence. You say all the worlds weep for Baldur. You say he was the most beloved of all beings. These are grand claims. The laws of my realm are absolute. What comes to me stays with me. The threads of fate are not so easily rewoven." She leaned forward slightly, her living eye seeming to pierce right through Hermod. "But a test may be made. A proof of this universal love you speak of. If Baldur is truly as beloved as you claim, then let us see it." A sliver of hope, dangerous and bright, ignited in Hermod's chest. "What is the test, my queen?" "The condition is simple," Hel said, the corpse half of her mouth twisting into something that might have been a smile. "If all things in the nine realms, animate and inanimate, living and dead, weep for Baldur, then he may return to you. But if even one thing, a single stone, a single plant, a single person refuses to shed a tear, then he remains here, with me, forever." The hope in Hermod's heart turned to ice. An impossible task, to secure the grief of everything. Every god, every giant, every dwarf, every human, every animal, every tree, every rock. A single refusal, a single dry eye, and Baldur was lost for good. It was a test designed to fail. Yet it was the only chance they had. "The terms are accepted," Hermod said, his voice grim with the weight of his new burden. "So be it," Hel decreed, settling back into her throne. "But your journey has been long. You will not leave my hall without refreshment. You are a guest now." She made a slight gesture with her living hand, and from the shadows servants emerged, pale, silent figures who moved without a sound. They led Hermod to a high seat at one of the long tables. And there, across the hall, seated in the place of highest honor next to Hel's empty chair, Hermod saw him. It was Baldur. He was pale, a shade of his former radiant self, but it was unmistakably him. He wore a crown of pale flowers and sat with a quiet dignity, a guest king in this land of shadows. Beside him sat his wife, Nanna, who had died of a broken heart upon his funeral pyre. Her love for him so strong it had followed him even into death. Their eyes met across the vast silent hall. No words were needed to convey the sorrow, the longing, the flicker of hope that Hermod's presence brought. Later, before he was to depart, Hermod was allowed to speak with his brother. Baldur's voice was a whisper of what it once was, but his spirit was unbroken. "Take this back to our father," Baldur said, and he slipped a golden ring from his finger. It was Draupnir, Odin's magical ring, which the Allfather had placed on Baldur's pyre in his grief. In death, the ring's magic was useless, a mere trinket. "Let it be a sign to him that I still live in my own way." Nanna, her face beautiful but etched with an eternal sadness, handed Hermod a fine embroidered linen gown. "For Frigg," she whispered. "Tell her a mother's love is not forgotten even here." Hermod took the gifts, his heart heavy. They were mementos from a world he was about to leave, tokens of a life he was fighting to restore. He bid his brother and his wife a final solemn farewell, the promise of his mission hanging unspoken between them. He turned his back on the silent feast, on the grim queen upon her throne, and on the beloved brother trapped in the gilded cage of the underworld. He walked back down the long aisle, past the unseeing eyes of the dead, and pushed open the great doors. The dim gray light of Helheim's sky greeted him like a long-lost friend. Sleipnir, the eight-legged steed, was waiting. Hermod swung himself into the saddle, the ring and the gown clutched tightly in his hand. He now carried more than just relics. He carried a fragile, conditional hope, and the fate of the sun itself. Behind him lay the kingdom of the dead. Before him, a desperate race against time and a quest to make the entire universe weep. The 9-day ride back from the land of the dead was a blur of thundering hooves and desperate prayer. Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged steed, devoured the miles, his gallop a frantic heartbeat against the silent dread of the cosmos. Hermod clung to the great horse, the cold of Helheim still clinging to his bones, a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He wasn't just a messenger anymore. He was a vessel, carrying the most fragile and precious cargo in all the 9 realms. A single conditional word: hope. He burst back into Asgard not with a triumphant cry, but with the haggard look of a man who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back. The Aesir rushed to meet him, their faces etched with a grief so profound it seemed to suck the very light from the sky. Odin, the Allfather, stepped forward, his one eye searching his son's face for any sign, any sliver of good news. Hermod, dismounting from the heaving Sleipnir, relayed Hel's ultimatum. His voice, hoarse from his journey, echoed through the stunned silence of the assembled gods. Baldur could return. He could walk among them again. His light could once more grace their halls, but only if one condition was met. Every single thing in all of creation, living and not, animate and inanimate, must weep for him. A collective breath was drawn, a gasp of disbelief mixed with a dawning, terrifying optimism. It was an impossible task, a demand of such cosmic scale it bordered on mockery. To make the entire universe shed a tear? Yet, for Baldur the beloved, the beautiful, the son of light, it was not impossible. It was necessary. The grief that had paralyzed them was suddenly galvanized into purpose. This was no longer a time for mourning. It was a time for a mission. Odin gave the command, and the gods scattered. Messengers were dispatched on the swiftest steeds, on the wings of eagles, and on the very winds themselves. They rode to the farthest corners of the 9 realms, their plea echoing from the highest peaks of Jotunheim to the deepest mines of Svartalfheim. Their message was simple: weep for Baldur. Weep and bring him back from the dead. And the universe, in a display of love never before seen, began to cry. In Midgard, the world of men, the weeping was a torrent. Kings in their halls and farmers in their fields alike felt a sorrow clutch their hearts, and tears streamed down their faces for a god they revered as the summer sun. Warriors leaned on their swords and wept, their fierce pride forgotten in a shared profound sadness. Children, not even understanding why, cried in their mother's arms, their innocent tears adding to the great lament. The messengers flew to Jotunheim, the land of the giants, the eternal enemies of Asgard. They expected resistance, scorn, perhaps even violence. Instead, they found a realm subdued. The great, craggy faces of the frost and mountain giants, beings of stone and ice, softened with a sorrow they could not deny. Even they had loved Baldur's light, the warmth he brought that held the worst of their eternal winter at bay. And so the giants wept. Their tears were avalanches of rock and slush, carving new rivers down their mountainside homes, their booming sobs shaking the very foundations of their icy kingdom. They descended into the earth, to the cavernous realm of Svartalfheim, where the dwarfs toiled in their subterranean forges. The ringing of 1,000 hammers on 1,000 anvils fell silent. The master craftsmen, their hands calloused and their faces smudged with soot, looked up from their glowing metals. When they heard the plea, they laid down their tools. The fires in the forges seemed to dim as the dwarves, beings of pragmatism and stone, wept. Their tears hissed on the hot coals, rising as steam, a mist of sorrow that filled their underground world. In Alfheim, the land of the light elves, the weeping was beautiful and tragic. Their joyful songs turned to mournful dirges. Their elegant dances became slow, sorrowful processions. Their tears were like liquid starlight, falling on the magical floor of their realm, making the flowers themselves bow their heads and drip with the dew of pure grief. The messengers found that their plea needed little convincing. The love for Baldur was a fundamental truth of existence, and it wasn't just the living who wept. The world itself joined the chorus of sorrow. The great trees of the forests wept tears of sap that trickled down their ancient bark. The stones and the mountains bled moisture, the very earth growing damp as if crying from its core. The metals in the ground, the gold and the iron, seemed to grow cold and weep with a metallic dew. From the sun, moon, and stars down to the smallest blade of grass, everything in creation that had ever felt the warmth of Baldur's light now shed a tear for its loss. The messengers began their journey back to Asgard, their hearts soaring. They had done it. The impossible had been achieved. The sheer, overwhelming power of love and grief had bent the will of the cosmos. Every giant, every elf, every human, every beast, every tree, and every stone had shed a tear. Baldur was coming home. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation. The sun, which had seemed dull and distant since his death, now felt a little warmer, a little brighter. On their triumphant return journey, full of the good news that would save them all, they passed a dark cave on the edge of a desolate moor. It was a place of shadow and cold, a blight on the landscape, and sitting in the entrance was a single figure, an old withered giantess. She sat on the cold stone, her face a mask of indifference, her eyes as dry as dust. The messengers, confident and joyous, approached her. "Old mother," they called out, "weep with us. Weep for Baldur, and help us bring him back from hell." The giantess looked up, her gaze cold and empty. She gave a dry, rasping cackle that sounded like stones grinding together. "What is this Baldur to me?" she croaked, her voice devoid of any emotion. The messengers stared, their smiles faltering. "He is the son of Odin," one explained, "the most beloved of all beings. All of creation weeps for him. You must too. It is the only way." The old woman, who called herself Thok, simply shrugged, a callous, dismissive gesture. "I never saw the man," she rasped. "I never cared for him when he was living, and I care for him even less now that he is dead. Let the living enjoy their lives. Let the dead stay with the dead." A chilling silence fell. The messengers could not believe what they were hearing. One single voice of dissent. One dry eye in a universe of tears. They pleaded. They begged. They explained the stakes, the cosmic importance of this one simple act of sorrow. But the giantess was unmoved. Her heart was a stone, and her eyes remained barren. She looked at the desperate gods before her and uttered the words that would seal the fate of the world, the words that would extinguish the brightest light in the heavens forever. "Thok will weep," she sneered. "Only dry tears for Baldur's burial. Let hell keep what she has." And with that, she turned her back on them and shuffled deeper into the darkness of her cave. The messengers stood frozen, the joyous news they carried turning to ash in their mouths. The hope that had burned so brightly across the 9 realms was suddenly, brutally, and irrevocably snuffed out. It had all been for nothing. One creature, one refusal, and because of it, the gates of hell would remain locked. Baldur was lost, and the long cold winter of Ragnarok was now one giant horrifying step closer. The return of Hermod to Asgard without Baldur was not like a wave crashing against a shore. It was like the tide silently receding, exposing a dead, barren seabed where life once thrived. The flicker of impossible hope that had sustained the gods was extinguished, and in its place, a vacuum of absolute despair formed. The grief, which had been a sharp, piercing pain, now settled into a permanent soul-crushing ache. There would be no miracle. There would be no dawn. There was only the cold, hard finality of loss. And so, the gods prepared for the one thing they had desperately tried to avoid: a funeral. But this could not be any funeral. This was for Baldur the Beautiful, the beloved of all. His farewell had to be a spectacle worthy of his life, a testament to the light he had brought into the 9 realms. They chose his ship, Ringhorni, the greatest vessel ever built, to be his funeral pyre. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, a behemoth of wood and iron so vast and heavy that it rested on the shore like a mountain range. When the time came to push it into the sea, the combined strength of the Aesir was not enough. The mighty ship wouldn't budge an inch. Their power, which could shake the foundations of the cosmos, was useless against the dead weight of their own sorrow. Forced to seek help, they sent a message to Jotunheim, the land of the giants, calling for the one being with the strength to move the unmovable, a giantess named Hyrrokin. She arrived riding a colossal wolf, using writhing, venomous vipers as reins. Her presence was a force of nature. Dismounting, she strode to the prow of Ringhorni, placed her hands upon it and heaved. The ground itself groaned and trembled. The earth shook so violently that the rollers beneath the ship burst into flames from the sheer friction. With a sound like thunder splitting the heavens, Ringhorni slid into the water, its path a trail of fire and splintered earth. Thor, his temper already frayed to a breaking point by grief, was enraged by the giantess's raw, destructive power at such a solemn occasion. He raised Mjolnir to crush her skull, but the other gods held him back, pleading that his rage not desecrate this final rite. Baldur's body was carried aboard the magnificent ship. As he lay upon the pyre, Odin, the Allfather, leaned down, his face a mask of ancient, unknowable sorrow. He pressed his lips to his son's ear and whispered a final secret, a word or a phrase that no one else would ever know. To this day, scholars and mystics wonder, what did the king of the gods say to his dead son? Was it a promise of vengeance? A key to some future rebirth? Or simply a father's last heartbroken goodbye? We will never know. The secret died with Baldur. At the sight of her husband being laid to rest, the heart of Baldur's wife, Nanna, finally gave out. It did not simply break. It shattered into 1,000 pieces from the sheer force of her grief. She collapsed, and her spirit fled her body. In their sorrow, the gods saw a bitter, tragic mercy in this. They gently lifted her and placed her on the pyre beside Baldur, so they might journey into the unknown together. The pyre was lit. As the flames began to lick at the sky, a dwarf named Litter, caught up in the proceedings, ran in front of Thor. In a blind flash of grief-fueled rage, Thor kicked the unfortunate creature, sending him flying directly into the heart of the inferno, his screams consumed by the blaze. It was a moment of shocking, senseless brutality, a sign that the gods' composure, their very divinity, was beginning to crack and crumble under the weight of this loss. All of creation came to watch the burning ship. Gods and giants, elves and dwarves, valkyries and beasts of the field. They stood on the shore, their ancient rivalries and feuds forgotten for a moment, united in a shared cosmic mourning. They watched as Ringhorni, wreathed in fire, drifted out into the endless ocean, a blazing star of sorrow against the darkening sky, carrying the light of the world away into eternal night. When the last ember had died and the last wisp of smoke had vanished into the twilight, the grief began to change. Like milk left in the sun, it began to sour, to curdle into something else. It became suspicion. It became anger. It became a burning, all-consuming need for vengeance. This was no accident. This was murder. And the murderer was still out there. The pieces began to fall into place with chilling speed. Hodr was blind. He could never have aimed the mistletoe dart with such deadly accuracy on his own. Someone had to have guided his hand. Frigg had extracted an oath from all things to never harm her son, but she had overlooked the mistletoe, thinking it too small and harmless to matter. Who could have known about this one single vulnerability? Who possessed the cunning to find the one loophole in a divine protection spell? And most damning of all, who would be so cruel as to disguise themselves as the giantess Thok, the one creature in all the 9 realms who refused to weep for Baldur, single-handedly sealing his fate in hell? The answer was as obvious as it was horrifying. There was only one being in the cosmos with the malice, the cleverness, and the sheer, spiteful audacity to orchestrate such a perfect, devastating tragedy. Loki. The name spread through Asgard like wildfire. It was Loki who had found the mistletoe. It was Loki who had tricked Hodr. It was Loki who had sabotaged the rescue. He had not just killed the god of light. He had danced on his grave and ensured the darkness would be permanent. The time for mourning was over. The hunt was on. Knowing the full, unrestrained fury of the Aesir was about to be unleashed upon him, Loki fled. He ran to the most remote, desolate mountains he could find and built a strange house for himself. It had 4 doors, one on each wall, so that he could sit in the center and watch for approaching enemies from every direction. He lived in a state of constant, twitching paranoia, his mind always racing, always plotting his next escape. By day, he would use his shape-shifting magic to transform himself into a salmon, hiding in the clear, cold waters of a nearby waterfall. He thought he was safe. He thought he was clever. He underestimated the All-Father. From his high throne Hlidskjaf, Odin can see all that transpires in the 9 realms. He saw Loki's pathetic fortress. He saw the salmon hiding in the water. He told the other gods, and they descended on the mountain with the fury of a storm. When they burst into Loki's empty house, it was the wise god Kvasir who noticed the ash of a burnt net in the hearth. In a flash of insight, he understood. Loki had been weaving a fishing net, and upon seeing the gods approach, had thrown it into the fire to destroy the evidence before transforming and leaping into the river. They knew his secret. Armed with Kvasir's knowledge, the gods wove a new net, one of incredible size and strength, and began to drag the river. Twice, Loki, in his slippery salmon form, was clever enough to dive deep and hide beneath stones on the riverbed, letting the net pass over him. The third time, seeing the gods closing in from both banks, he made a desperate choice. He swam downstream and with a powerful flick of his tail, leaped high into the air, trying to clear the net and escape to the open sea. But Thor was waiting. The god of thunder had waded into the middle of the river, his eyes fixed on the water. As the silver fish arched through the air, Thor shot out his hand and grabbed it. Loki was strong and slippery, and for a moment he almost wriggled free. But Thor's grip was like iron. He squeezed tighter and tighter, his hand sliding down the thrashing body until he had a firm hold on the narrow part of the tail. The trickster's flight was over. He was caught. The gods dragged him from the water, his magical disguise melting away to reveal his true, terrified form. The chase had ended, but for Loki, the god of lies, the true nightmare was only just beginning. They dragged him, kicking and spitting, from the cold river, his silver scales vanishing back into pale skin. There was no trial. There were no arguments, no pleas for mercy. The time for words, Loki's greatest weapon, was over. Odin's face was a mask of cold fury, a storm cloud that promised not rain but annihilation. Thor's knuckles were white around the handle of Mjolnir, the air crackling with his barely contained rage. The other gods formed a silent, grim procession, their expressions a mixture of grief, hatred, and a terrible final resolution. They didn't take him back to the golden halls of Asgard. That world was now forever closed to him. Instead, they took him deep into the earth, to a place the sun had never touched. A cavern vast and silent, where the only sound was the dripping of water that had been seeping through rock for millennia. It was a place of forgetting, a tomb for the living. Here they found 3 massive stone slabs, sharpened by time into cruel, jagged edges. This would be his prison. This would be his judgment. But chains of mortal steel would not hold a god, even one so diminished. The Aesir needed something more, something personal, something born of betrayal itself. And so they brought forth Loki's 2 sons by his wife Sigyn. Their names were Narfi and Vali. They were young, unaware of the cosmic drama their father had unleashed, their eyes wide with confusion and fear as they were led into the gloom. Loki screamed for them. He begged the gods to leave his children out of it, to visit their vengeance upon him alone. He thrashed against their grip, his voice echoing in the cavern, a father's desperate plea. But his words fell on deaf ears. The gods were beyond reason, beyond pity. Their grief for Baldur had curdled into a poison as black as any Loki had ever concocted. Odin raised a hand and a terrible ancient magic filled the air. He looked at the boy Vali and spoke words of power, words of unmaking. The boy cried out as the magic took hold, a visceral twisting force that seized his very being. His bones buckled and snapped, reforming into a new and monstrous shape. His skin split, sprouting coarse gray fur. His gentle face elongated into a muzzle filled with dagger-like teeth. and from his throat came a sound that was no longer human, no longer divine, but the guttural, hungry howl of a wolf. The gods had not just changed him, they had erased him, replacing the boy with a creature of pure, mindless savagery. Before anyone could react, before Narfi could even scream his brother's name, the wolf that was once Valley lunged. It was a blur of fur and claws and teeth, a whirlwind of violence that ended in a sickening tear. Narfi, his own brother, fell to the stone floor, his life spilling out in a crimson tide. Loki's roar of anguish was the sound of a universe breaking. It was a sound of absolute soul-shattering horror. He watched, helpless, as the gods, his former comrades, his sworn brothers, stood with unflinching resolve. They had turned his son into a monster to murder his other son. This wasn't justice. This was a violation. An act so profoundly cruel it tainted the very essence of the gods who committed it. But they were not finished. The true purpose of this horrific act was yet to be revealed. While Loki was still reeling, paralyzed by grief, the gods moved in. They took the entrails of the slain Narfi, still warm, still soft, and they used them as ropes. They wrapped them around Loki's body, lashing him to the 3 great stone slabs. One across his shoulders, one across his loins, and one under his knees, forcing him into a position of eternal agonizing strain. And as Odin uttered another word of binding, the gut of Loki's murdered son hardened. It transformed, turning from soft tissue into chains of unyielding, unbreakable iron. The bonds were now a part of the stone itself, and Loki was fused to his prison, a living monument to his own crime and the gods' boundless capacity for vengeance. He was trapped, utterly and completely, by the remains of his own child. Even this was not enough. The gods' hatred demanded more. Skadi, the giantess and goddess of winter, whose own father had been killed through Loki's scheming, stepped forward. Her face was a frozen mask of satisfaction. In her hands she held a serpent, a monstrous viper with scales that shimmered like polished jet in the gloom. She climbed the rocks above Loki's head and, with a final hateful glare, she fixed the snake there, its fanged mouth gaping directly over his face. And then it began. A single drop of venom, glistening in green, fell from the serpent's fangs. It landed on Loki's forehead. The sizzle was instantaneous. The pain was beyond description. It was not the clean pain of a sword or the blunt force of a hammer. It was a liquid fire that burned not just his skin, but his very soul. It was an acid that seared through flesh and bone, a torment that promised no relief, no end. Another drop fell, and another, each one a fresh wave of agony, an eternity of torture contained in a single searing moment. Loki thrashed against his iron-hard bonds. He screamed until his throat was raw, his body convulsing with such violent power that the very foundations of the earth shook. The mortals in Midgard, feeling the ground tremble beneath their feet, would look to the sky and call them earthquakes, never knowing they were feeling the death throes of a god's sanity, the echoes of an unbearable torment in a lightless cave miles beneath them. The gods turned and left him to his fate. They walked out of the cavern, leaving him to the darkness, the dripping water, and the endless rhythmic fall of the serpent's poison. They believed their vengeance was complete. They believed they had neutralized the threat, locking away the source of their future doom. They were wrong. They hadn't just imprisoned a god. They had created a crucible. In that dark, forgotten cave, they were forging Loki's grief and pain into a weapon of pure nihilistic hatred. A hatred that would not fade but would grow and fester and wait. But he was not left entirely alone. As the footsteps of the gods faded, a single figure emerged from the shadows. It was Sijin, his wife. Her face was a canvas of sorrow, her eyes filled with the pain that mirrored his own. She had lost her sons, her husband, her world. Yet she had not abandoned him. In her hands she held a simple wooden bowl. She knelt before her tormented husband, and with an act of unwavering, heartbreaking loyalty, she held the bowl up to catch the serpent's venom. She stood there, a solitary guardian against an infinite tide of pain, catching each drop before it could touch his skin. For a time Loki found a small measure of peace. The convulsions ceased. His screams softened to ragged breaths. He could see his wife, a single point of light in his endless dark, her love a fragile shield against the gods' infinite cruelty. But the bowl was not infinite. Eventually it would fill. Sijin would have to turn away, just for a moment, to empty the acrid poison onto the cavern floor. And in that moment, without her protection, A drop or two would always fall, and the agony would begin anew. Loki's screams would rip through the cavern once more. The earth would shudder with his torment, and his hatred for the gods of Asgard would be rekindled, burning hotter and brighter than before. This was his existence now, moments of pained stillness, shattered by spasms of unimaginable torture. A cycle of suffering, defiance, and ever-deepening rage, waiting for the day his bonds would finally break, and his vengeance would be unleashed upon all the 9 worlds. And as the venom dripped and the god writhed, a chill began to creep into the heart of the cosmos. Not the familiar cold of a Midgardian winter, but something deeper, something ancient and absolute. It was the Fimbulwinter, the mighty winter, the first true sign that the age of the gods was over. For 3 straight years snow fell from all directions, driven by relentless biting winds. The sun became a pale, forgotten memory, a ghost in a sky of perpetual twilight gray. All kinship, all bonds of family and honor, dissolved in the face of desperation. Brother turned against brother for a crust of bread. Fathers betrayed sons. Oaths once held as sacred as the roots of Yggdrasil became meaningless whispers in the gale. It was the Axe Age, the Sword Age, where shields were cloven, the Wind Age, the Wolf Age, before the world was wrecked. Humanity, caught in this brutal frozen death grip, turned on itself, a prelude to the greater war to come. Then came the second sign. A sound. 3 terrible crows, shattering the silence of the dying worlds. In Asgard, high in the branches of Yggdrasil, the golden rooster Gullinkambie crowed, a desperate, clarion call to the Aesir. In Jotunheim, the land of the giants, the crimson rooster Fjalar shrieked its answer, awakening the ancient enemies of the gods. And deep below the earth, in the halls of hell, a soot-red rooster echoed the warning to the legions of the dishonorable dead. The universe was holding its breath, waiting for the final snap. And it came from the sky. For eons, 2 colossal wolves had pursued the sun and moon across the heavens. Skoll, the one who mocks, chased the sun. Hati, the one who hates, chased the moon. They were the children of Fenrir, born of cosmic rage, and for all of history, their prey had always been just out of reach. But in the chaos of Fimbulwinter, with the order of the cosmos unraveling, the chase was finally over. With a great and terrible lunge, Skoll caught the sun, his jaws closing around the chariot of fire, extinguishing its light forever. The sky bled, and in the sudden terrifying darkness Hati seized the moon, crushing the silver orb and plunging the 9 worlds into an abyss of absolute, starless black. The very fabric of reality began to tear. The great world tree Yggdrasil trembled from its deepest root to its highest leaf. The earth itself convulsed in violent, world-shattering earthquakes. Mountains were torn from their foundations and collapsed into dust. Forests were ripped from the soil. And in this cataclysm, every chain, every fetter, every bond, both magical and mundane, was broken. The enchanted rope Gleipnir, thin as a silken ribbon but stronger than any iron, strained against the growing might of the beast it held. And deep in that dark, dripping cave, the chains forged from the entrails of a murdered son shattered. Loki was free, his body scarred and twisted by ages of torment, his mind honed to a single burning point of pure, unadulterated vengeance. He did not scream. He did not roar. He simply rose, the venom of the serpent still sizzling on his skin, and a terrible, knowing smile spread across his lips. The end had begun, and he would be its master of ceremonies. The quakes that freed Loki also stirred the other children of his rage. In the depths of the world-circling ocean, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, began to stir. He thrashed in a fury, his colossal body generating tidal waves that scoured the coastlines of Midgard. The ocean rose, flooding the lands, and the serpent, spewing black poison into the air and water, finally raised his head from the sea and began to slither towards the final battlefield. The floodwaters had another effect. They lifted a ship that had been waiting for this very moment. Naglfar, a vessel of horror, built entirely from the unclipped fingernails and toenails of the dead. It was a monument to humanity's disrespect and neglect, and now, freed by the rising tide, it set sail on the black waves, its deck swarming with the frost giants of Jotunheim, and at its helm a grim-faced Loki steering it towards the ruin of his enemies. Meanwhile, the wolf Fenrir, feeling the tremors and the breaking of all bonds, gave one final titanic heave. The unbreakable Gleipnir snapped. With a howl that cracked the very stones of the earth, the great wolf was loose. His size was beyond comprehension. When he opened his mouth, his lower jaw scraped the ground while his upper jaw tore at the darkened sky. Fire burned in his eyes and poured from his nostrils. He was hunger incarnate, the embodiment of destruction, and he began to run, devouring everything in his path, a living engine of apocalypse. From the south, another army marched. The sky itself split open, and through the fiery rift came the sons of Muspelheim, the fire giants, beings of primordial flame and destruction, with Surtur at their head. Surtur, older than the gods themselves, wielding a sword that burned brighter than the stolen sun. They marched across the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge connecting Midgard and Asgard, and the sacred bridge, designed to withstand any assault, crumbled and shattered into incandescent dust behind them. Asgard was now cut off. There was no escape, and on the border of heaven the watchman saw it all. Heimdall, the god with hearing so sharp he could hear grass grow and wool sprout on a sheep. His eyes could see for 100 leagues. He stood at his post at the edge of the ruined Bifrost, and he saw it all. He saw the waves carrying Naglfar. He saw the shadow of Fenrir devouring the world. He saw the fire of Surtur burning the sky. He saw Loki, his face a mask of triumphant hate, leading the charge. And so Heimdall raised the Gjallarhorn to his lips, the horn of fate. He took a deep breath and blew a single soul-shaking note, a sound so profound and so terrible that it was heard in every corner of the 9 worlds. It was heard by the gods in the golden halls of Asgard. It was heard by the dwarves in their mountains. It was heard by the souls of the dead in hell. It was the alarm, the final warning. Ragnarok was not coming. Ragnarok was here. The sound of the Gjallarhorn finally broke the spell of grief and dread that had fallen over Asgard since Baldur's death. This was it, the doom they had foreseen, the fate they had tried to outrun. But the Aesir were not cowards. They did not hide. The Allfather, Odin, mounted his 8-legged steed, Sleipnir, and galloped not to his throne, but to Mimir's well. He held the preserved, severed head of the wise giant Mimir, the keeper of all knowledge, and asked for one final piece of counsel, one last secret from the well of wisdom before the end. The other gods moved with grim purpose. Thor gripped his hammer Mjolnir, his knuckles white. Tyr, the one-handed god of justice, fastened his sword belt. Frey Vidar, all of them. They donned their golden armor, gathered their weapons, and assembled the Einherjar, the host of the bravest mortal warriors who had died in battle and feasted for centuries in Valhalla, waiting for this very day. They marched out of the great gates of Asgard, a shining army of gods and heroes, to meet their destiny. Their destination was the plain of Vigrid, a vast battlefield 100 leagues in every direction. And there, waiting for them, was the enemy, an army of nightmares, the frost giants, the fire giants, the legions of the dead, the great wolf Fenrir, the world serpent Jormungandr, and at their head, the architect of it all, the god of lies, the blood brother of Odin, Loki. The two armies faced each other across the desolate plain under a black, sunless sky. The air grew still. The ground trembled. For a moment there was only a profound, terrifying silence. The silence before the storm. The silence at the end of the world. Then a single piercing note cut through the silence. High and clear, it was the sound of the Gjallarhorn. Heimdall, guardian of the Bifrost, had sounded the final alarm. The battle had begun. With a roar that was the fury of all the ages, the armies of Asgard charged. At their head was Odin, the Allfather, astride his 8-legged steed Sleipnir. His golden helmet gleamed like a dying star, his spear Gungnir held ready. He did not charge towards the legions of giants or the armies of the dead. He rode directly for the greatest of his fears, the beast that haunted his prophecies. He rode for Fenrir. The great wolf, now unbound, was a monster of impossible scale. Its lower jaw scraped the blood-soaked earth while its upper jaw tore at the starless sky. Fire burned in its eyes and smoke poured from its nostrils. It was not an animal, it was a living apocalypse. It met Odin's charge with a howl that was the sound of mountains breaking. The Allfather, the god of wisdom, poetry, and war, fought with all the power and knowledge he had gathered over countless eons. But fate is a current stronger than any god. As the prophecies had foretold, the great wolf's jaws opened wide, a cavern of teeth and shadow, and in a single horrifying moment Odin, king of Asgard, was gone, devoured. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. The Einherjar faltered. The loss was unthinkable. But before despair could take root, a figure stepped forward from the Aesir ranks. He was a god of few words, known for his silence and his grim determination. This was Vidar, son of Odin. On his foot was a massive shoe, one cobbled together from all the leather scraps and cuttings that human shoemakers had discarded throughout history. It was a shoe made to withstand the unendurable. Filled with a silent, burning rage, Vidar strode towards the beast that had consumed his father. He placed his enchanted boot into Fenrir's lower jaw, and with his bare hands, he grabbed the wolf's upper jaw. With a surge of cosmic strength born of grief and vengeance, he ripped the monster apart. The silent god had avenged the All-Father, but there was no time for victory. Elsewhere, the sky itself was at war. Thor, god of thunder, finally faced his ancient nemesis, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent. The beast rose from the boiling seas, its colossal body coiling around the mountains, its head blotting out what little light remained. It spat black venom that poisoned the air and the land. Thor, his eyes blazing with righteous fury, met the serpent head-on. Mjolnir, the mighty hammer, flew again and again, each blow like a crack of doom, crashing against the serpent's impenetrable scales. The earth buckled under the force of their struggle. Finally, with one last, desperate, all-encompassing swing, Thor crushed the serpent's skull. The beast writhed in its death throes, its coils thrashing and leveling the remaining landscape before it sank, lifeless, back into the sea. Thor stood victorious, his chest heaving. He had slain the world serpent. He had won. But as the monster died, it exhaled a final cloud of its potent venom, which washed over the god of thunder. Thor staggered back, his face pale. He took one step, 2, 3. He tried to raise his hammer to call out his victory. 4, 5, 6. His strength failed him. 7, 8, 9 steps. And then the mightiest of the gods, the protector of Midgard, fell to the dead earth and was no more. The great duels of fate played out across the dying world. The beautiful god Freyr, who had long ago traded his magic sword for the love of a giantess, now faced the fire giant Surtur. Armed only with a stag's antler, Freyr fought with incredible bravery, but it was a hopeless battle. Surtur's flaming sword, brighter than the sun that was now gone, cut him down. The bitterest enemies, Heimdall and Loki, found each other amidst the chaos. The ever-watchful guardian and the master of lies, their hatred of fire that had simmered for ages, now met for their final confrontation. They fought with a venomous fury that mirrored the war around them, and in the end, they dealt each other a mortal blow, falling together in a final hateful embrace. The god of justice, the one-handed Tyr, battled Garm, the monstrous hound of hell. They too were fated to be each other's doom, and they perished together, locked in combat. The gods fell. The giants fell. The heroes of Valhalla fell. The world of men was shattered. And when the last champion had breathed his last, Surtur, the fire giant, stood alone amidst the carnage. He lifted his blazing sword, and with a single sweeping motion, he set the 9 realms ablaze. Fire consumed everything. The mountains melted. The trees turned to ash in an instant. The very ground split open. The seas rose up, boiling and hissing, and washed over the burning land. The world screamed one final, agonizing cry, and then it sank beneath the waves. Silence. Darkness. Nothing. The end. But the prophecies did not end in nothing. They spoke of a cycle. They spoke of a death that was not an end but a cleansing. Slowly and possibly out of the silent, dark waters, a new world began to rise. It was green and beautiful and pure. The sun, a daughter of the old sun, shone in a clear blue sky, warmer and gentler than before. The fields grew lush and fertile without needing to be sown. And on the highest, greenest hill, figures began to appear. Vidar and his brother Vali, sons of Odin, had survived the fire and the flood. And with them were Modi and Magni, the sons of Thor. Between them they carried a precious burden, Mjolnir. The hammer had not been destroyed. It had endured, a tool not for war but now for blessing and building. Then 2 more figures walked out of the underworld, their passage now unopposed. It was Baldur, the beautiful, the beloved, finally returned to the light. And walking by his side was his brother, Hodr, the blind god who had been Loki's pawn. In this new world there was no blame, no bitterness between them. Their embrace was one of reconciliation. The wound that had triggered the end of the world was finally healed by its rebirth. They sat together in the green fields of Ida, the place where Asgard once stood. And as they talked of the old world, of its glories and its follies, they found something shining in the grass. The golden game pieces of the Aesir, the very ones they had played with in a time of peace, long before the first shadow fell. A remnant of the past, a promise for the future. And from the deep woods 2 humans emerged, a man and a woman named Lif and Lifthraiser. They had hidden from Searcher's fire in the trunk of the world tree, and they had survived. From them, a new humanity would be born to populate this gentle, peaceful world. Ragnarok was not a story about a simple end. It was the story of an end that was necessary. The old world of the gods was built on glorious deeds, but also on broken oaths, on binding fears, on secrets and deceptions. Baldur's death was not just a mistake. It was the single tragic event that pulled the thread, unraveling a tapestry that was already frayed. It was the catalyst that forced a flawed universe to face its own end. The twilight of the gods was not their defeat. It was their destiny, a violent, tragic, and heartbreaking destiny that washed the world clean, allowing for a new, gentler dawn. A world where the mistakes of the past could be remembered, but not repeated. A world born not from an act of creation, but from the ashes of a beautiful, terrible, and necessary end.